Cormier and David Booten.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that when I was reading your post about Horn and funding.
Yeah.
They got $238,000 laying around, maybe.
And they got $25,000 left.
Yeah, and they spent $100,000 to keep Booten. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back to continue this conversation.
We are struggling. Rising healthcare costs are part of the problem. Senator Jeanne Shaheen helped create this mess we're in. As a state senator, her bill chased 21 insurers out of our state. It reduced our choices, raised prices for New Hampshire families, and when Jeanne Shaheen supported Obamacare, it limited access to 10 of our 26 hospitals, reducing our choices again. Tell Jeanne Shaheen she's made healthcare worse.
All right, we are back.
Yes, Master.
Yes, Master. Go ahead, do that again.
Yes, Master.
Nobody in my house says that to me at all.
Not even your dogs? Well, they don't speak.
They wag their tails. They lick my face. But then again, they're dogs.
Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Just look for Granite Grok. I have been tweeting parts and bits and pieces of the show, not in the last 10 minutes because I was talking, but that, yeah. And then, of course, iHeart, Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, TuneIn, YouTube.
Ustream.
Ustream. You should be watching our program right now. And if you're not, you can listen to it later or watch it later on all of those platforms.
So we were talking about farm teams.
We were talking about farm teams.
And that the NHGOP actually has become an insular, good old boy institution. Again, the poster child being David, I was too drunk to know, Booten, showing that. And also, let's not forget all the money that the New Hampshire Senate Republican Majority PAC poured into Nancy Stiles' race, again, to defeat somebody that we supported, Steve Kenda. And I understand that people are going to pick their people. But when you pick, this is the double talk that just drives a lot of us in the grassroots crazy. Here we are, we've been complaining about Obamacare, and the official line from the Senate Republicans that voted for Obamacare's Medicaid expansion is, well, we had to make it less bad because we knew that Nancy Stiles was going to vote for the Democrat version of it, through and through. So we had to try to make it less onerous. That whole argument falls apart when you look at how much money they threw at Nancy Stiles. So here they're trying to use her as a scapegoat,
Yeah, they threw a ton of money at her.
and try to keep her as an incumbent.
Yeah, we couldn't block it because of her, but we're going to give her a lot of money to make sure she stays.
Yeah, and you look at that and you go, yeah. In other words, here's the good old boy network, and then they wonder why there is. I keep saying this week after week. I am surprised by the number of people who are taking on the idea of, well, it's time to send a message. And let's be clear, voting for John Stark for governor, voting for John Langdon for U.S. Senate, hopefully will send a message if it's statistically enough people to do this. And it's a case of saying we are not going to continue this. We're not going to support these folks that have been handpicked. And there was an email that came across our collective desks as part of our, the Grokster group here. My vote is an endorsement. Mm-hmm. And I sat there and I went, that's probably the best way the pithiest way I've seen of what I've been trying to say all along, which is I have very few little things left that are accrued to me as being an American citizen. My vote is one of them. I want to hold it precious and I want to hold it expensive. I'm no longer going to spend it just because the party demands it, just because the old voter paradigm says vote for who you think is the great guy in the primary, but then follow the party diktat after the primary. I'm not doing that anymore.
Same party that allows Democrats to rob you of that vote.
Yeah. So, and it goes back to what I was saying about the small groups are going to start taking the power away. We talked about it in 2010. the post I put up last night where all these outside groups are spending so much money are taking power away from the parties. They're finally saying, you're not doing anything, Republicans. And one of Jennifer Horn's campaign promises when she ran for chair was that she was going to totally redo the party technology. That hasn't happened. She was going to unify the party, well, sort of like Obama's promise that he was going to unify the country. That's not happening either, and we certainly have run out of money. But all these other groups have said, because of the dysfunction within the GOP that we see, we're going to step in instead. And I see that that's going to continue for quite some time, because when the Republicans at the top decide we're going to pull up the drawbridge and make it our own, that's exactly what they're going to do. And it leaves the rest of us out here saying, well, what are we supposed to be? Just mindless robots? And I'm hoping that they're going to get the message. Not for long, any guy. And you look at the current polls, the last ones that just came out. For U.S. Senate, Brown's down. For New Hampshire governor, Havenbagger's down. And yes, I choose that word specifically. Because you know something? If you're going to insult me, how dare you think that I'm going to vote for you just because you're least worst? I mean, you're pro-choice. That's a big deal for me. If you're going to insult my integrity and then refuse to apologize for it because you don't, well, I just didn't know what it meant at the time. Well, if you had called me the N-word, would you, and then found out it was offensive, would you have apologized? If you had said it to a black guy, I bet you yes.
I don't think somebody who's been the CEO of a large company like that is one who's prone to using words they're not familiar with in public context. That just doesn't sound right to me.
Or a lieutenant colonel in the Marines hasn't heard that word before.
Right. So, even if he hadn't heard it, if he heard it and he didn't know what it meant, you don't go out and make a public speech and use a word that you're unfamiliar with the meaning of.
And smirk about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just kind of dumb.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but with Brown, if he wants to go to the left of Jeanne Shaheen on being pro-choice, if that's basically the signal that, she's been campaigning about, I'm all for defending New Hampshire. Yeah, well, let's go back to the best example I can think of is when the New Hampshire Executive Council voted 5-0 not to fund Planned Parenthood of New England, and she decided to override the New Hampshire-based decision, a legal decision by its elected representatives, and fund them anyways with federal money, our tax money. What does that say about her? And now Brown's going to the left of her and saying, I'm pro-choice?
I'll get him more money. Woohoo!
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, to his credit, he's been really good on the illegal immigration stuff, at least in his speeches. But it still comes down all the way around to the single 5-letter word, trust. Can I trust him? I hear the words, but can I trust him? Can I trust him when he goes down to Washington? I can't give you a yes. I don't.
Especially given that the current thing to do with immigration is to provide some kind of legislative amnesty so the president doesn't have to do executive amnesty.
Yeah. When he openly campaigns to say, I'm going to be independent of the party.
Democrats are independent of the Republican Party.
Yeah, and then the voting record. And it just, the whole thing just grinds on you after a bit. And you got to go, my vote is an endorsement. Is this what I wish to endorse?
Oh, we've heard plenty of arguments on both sides. We recommend that people think long and hard about this and make a conscious decision on their own about what to do because, it is your vote and you need to make that choice yourself. And then if you do decide to vote for Brown and he does win, you now have an obligation to hold him to a fire, any fire. And that's what you need to do. If you vote against him, you've done what you said you would do to vote against him. I'm not telling anybody what to do in this race. I'm picking on Jeanne Shaheen because that's what I like to do because it's easy and she's ridiculous. Doesn't mean Brown's better. Doesn't mean we're endorsing him. It just means we're poking sticks at Democrats.
Well, here's the deal. Pete Ingemi, the tech guy, made that comment over and over and over again. Once they get elected, hold their feet to the fire.
Well, they don't listen. Yeah, there is that. But you need
that's exactly the point.
Yeah, but
here's
will
the thing. They listen?
The only people doing that are people like us. We need to everybody to do it. We need to get more people to do it. I mean, if they're getting 50 phone calls versus, say, 10, one way or another, or 5,000 versus 10, it has a bit of an influence. You as a voter have a responsibility. If you go vote for somebody, you now have an obligation to make sure they do what you thought they told you they were going to do, even as crappy as Brown is on all these issues. We can't do it ourselves. We've proven that. I've long been a supporter of Susan Olson's Screw DC, Save New Hampshire, and I've been there for years. The fact that we talk about national races is because we have one, and you can't get away from that. And we would always rather have the Bill O'Briens who come and say, look, everybody in the Democrat Party says I'm bad for New Hampshire. All Bill is going to do is try to make sure you have more of your own money than the government does. That's really all it comes down to.
And you get to make more choices
exactly, because
for yourself.
Well, that's because you have the money. It's yours. We can't do anything without your money. If we let you have more of it, we will be doing less. So you now decide. It's your money, your power, your authority, your influence. You decide. Democrats don't want that.
And look at the difference between Scott Brown and Bill O'Brien. Scott Brown...
Oh, my.
Yeah. Look at the case of the voting records. The NHGOP elite are falling all over themselves, slobbering all over the floor because they're his candidate. They want him to win. And yet, when you look at his results, when you look at his past activities, most of us in the grassroots go, at best, yeah. That's it. I mean, there's not much to stand up and cheer about. And in a lot of cases, there's a lot to cry about or pound holes into walls about.
Scott Brown's value to the NHGOP.
But he's a rock star. You look at Bill O'Brien. Yes, he's brusque, but he saw that a mission had to be done. He grabbed the bull by the horns, to use a hackneyed phrase, and said, I got to get it done. He got it done. And what happens? He followed Republican principles. And what does the NHGOP elite think of him?
They don't like him.
No. Doesn't that show the dysfunction in the GOP?
Oh, heck yeah. What I was going to say is that you said he's a rock star. I was going to say, if Kim Kardashian had said she was moving to New Hampshire to run for the New Hampshire Senate against Jeanne Shaheen, they would have loved her just as much.
She can self-fund.
She can self-fund, too, yeah. All right. Well, we're supposed to have a guest next segment, although I haven't gotten any information on whether or not Darlene's going to be here, but hopefully she shows up. Darlene Pawlik. Oh, there she is!
Yay!
Right on schedule from New Hampshire Right to Life. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
We are struggling. Rising healthcare costs are part of the problem. Senator Jeanne Shaheen helped create this mess we're in. As a state senator, her bill chased 21 insurers out of our state. It reduced our choices, raised prices for New Hampshire families, and when Jeanne Shaheen supported Obamacare, it limited access to 10 of our 26 hospitals, reducing our choices again. Tell Jeanne Shaheen she's made healthcare worse. Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it. Call Ann Custer. Tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.